beautiful people. I am here today with Bentinho Massaro, and I'm so excited to be here because Bentinho has been one of my mentors from afar, my teachers. I call him very authentically one of the new thought leaders of the next generation. And I know that term is thrown around a lot these days, but I really very sincerely think that Bentinho is the real deal and is a thought leader because he's really coming from a place of truth rather than just um, teaching old school traditions. So thank you so much for being here, Bentinho. Am I saying your name right, first of all?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. I'm Aussie, so we don't always say it correctly. And I want to share with people how this even came about for me because this is part of my flow. And I want to thank you for being part of my flow because I had a pretty epic week and I had gone to a workshop last weekend and had massive shifts and moments of complete surrender, breakdowns, and breakthroughs. And I was having issues with my voice. And I had this awareness during the week that my voice was very connected to really stepping into my purpose and desire to be a spiritual teacher as well. And I had this issue because my brother is a complete fundamentalist atheist, and I was holding back because of because of being scared of what he would think of what I was putting out there. So I did all this kind of
Did,
clearing on that and um, really decide to just go for it anyway. Within an hour, I had an email from your people asking if I'd like to do an interview with you because they had seen an article I'd written. And I was like, are you kidding? Like an hour after I came into this awareness, my favorite spiritual teacher is, his people are contacting me. And I'm like, I can't make this shit up. Like, this is flow and manifestation at its, at top level. And just, it proves what I teach a lot as well is that there's hustle and like immersion of hustle and flow, that you don't always have to chase opportunities, that when you're in complete alignment with source, opportunities can come to you without you having to chase them. So thank you for being part of that flow, picking up my signal.
Sweet. Well, it was actually my dear friend and personal assistant that did that
Yeah,
all on her own, so it's very cool.
yeah, it's amazing. So thank you. And I think the first question I would love to know and about you is you talk a lot about following the breadcrumbs of joy. And I would love to know what you are completely delighted by. What lights you up? What do you find so joyful?
Sweet. Well, it changes all the time. So in terms of and there's sort of two categories. One is like sort of what I feel as my life's mission, my life's purpose. And then there's like aspects that tie into that, things that help me develop as a channel, as a human being. So we can talk about, for example, I can mention some of my passions like rock climbing, and right now it's free diving, which is diving on a single breath. I'm here in Hawaii, and I'm just getting started with it. So I have activities like that that I fall in love with, and
Mm.
that I practice and perform. But these are just sort of my physical activities, friends. The most important parts of my life and that which really makes me light up is anything that is connected to what I feel is what I'm here for.
Yeah,
Um, there's a very strong echo right now.
it's an
That
aeroplane.
sorry,
It's a plane, an aeroplane.
no, no,
Oh,
I hear an echo right now of my own voice.
oh, your own voice. I turned
Okay,
the volume up. That could be it.
there we go.
Is that better?
This is good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Does that work for you?
Yes.
Okay. So basically, I'm never trying to determine what my passion is. I'm never trying to figure out what my passion is because I've found that when I try to figure out what my most exciting thing in life is, I actually miss the mark.
Mm.
So I've learned to let go of whatever I think I should be doing or whatever I think is my mission and just act on the things that are most exciting to me. And whenever I do that, even if it seems to be something that's more of a hobby like rock climbing or free diving, I've always found that after some period of time, it ties into all these other topics that I
Mm.
could never have conjured up before, that then together help me write on certain topics or like teach on certain topics or be able to relate to human beings in a way that makes me able to reach them at a deeper place. Or it trains me to be a better entrepreneur or better CEO or better, with all the business side of things. We're starting new projects that really aim to increase well-being and awakeness all across this planet for at least within the next 20 years.
Mm.
So I'm really enjoying my shift into something more than just a spiritual teacher label,
Yeah.
and really start thinking outside of the box. So I'd say that that's probably the most obvious and the biggest aspect of what really makes me come alive right now. It's in addition to everything I'm already doing that I'm already crazy about, that I'm already super passionate about and devoted to, it really is that next level organization, which is branching out in all kinds of ways, contacting experts, organizing sub companies that are aimed at somehow increasing well-being and benefit and awakening
Mm.
across this planet. So that's like the bigger the vision for me, the most exciting it is to
Yeah.
basically to be alive, to like
Yeah.
be me. And like the more challenging it becomes and the more I meet myself and the quicker I grow, etc. So
Yeah. Do you work really hard? Do you work long hours?
do I work long hours? It depends. It's like periodically, but when I do, it comes from such a passion and
Yeah.
inspiration that it doesn't feel like work, and I work throughout the night, and I'm by myself a lot of the time and just like getting a lot of stuff done.
Yeah.
And then for periods at a time, for weeks at a time, I don't really do much of anything in that nature, um, where you could typically say, well, he's doing a lot. But I'm always doing a lot in terms of being very, very aware of the dynamics of any relationships that I'm a part of, whether that's the
Mm.
company, my team, or my friends, or the people I live with, or my partners. Um, and the teaching, obviously. So I have a very strong relationship to the people that I share this information with, a very strong heartfelt devotion towards that. So I'm always aware of like new concepts and new angles, and how that interplay is going, so to speak. It's a little hard to describe. It's all very subtle, but I'm
Yeah.
always super active on a sort of higher mental plane, as I would call it, um, digesting new information and extracting what's the most benefit and leaving what does not work, and like balancing things out all the time in myself and the people around me in my everyday life. So I'm always occupied in some
Yeah.
way,
Yeah.
but I'm not typically busy all the time in terms of like working long hours, only when that feels really inspired to me. Because
Mm.
when I do that without inspiration, it's just working against the flow, and it's actually
Yeah.
not very pleasant, and it
Yeah.
doesn't feel very balanced to me. So I go through periods of intense inspiration in the form of like physical logistical work, like lots of emails, projects, websites,
Yeah.
talking to people, phone calls, and then periods where it's more like, um, in a sense, more laid back and experiencing myself more internally
Mm.
focused, so to speak.
Yeah. So it's always being taking action in the flow state.
Yes, exactly.
And that's one of the reasons I asked that, because I actually launching something, and it's really connected to women, because I feel like women are so in the masculine mode. I call it the beast mode. It's like this hustle is such a power statement, and it's glorifying being busy and hustling, and I find women are very off balance. So I love to teach women this beautiful fusion zone of the masculine and the feminine. But one thing I wanted to ask you your interpretation of that, because I feel like some people that go into that teachings, they go straight into the feminine, and there's this whole like rising of the divine feminine. And I think that's a very old school way of thinking, and I think it creates separation. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that. I know you wrote something on Facebook about the feminine, but it was more for women that are really, trying to push against the opposite. So yeah, what do you feel about the feminine?
Yeah, I think it's beautiful that you have that perspective. I agree with you. First of all, let me share one thing that I learned from that sort of controversial post that I made, which got a lot of comments and backfire, and like
Yeah,
all kinds of people commenting all kinds of things.
which is amazing.
Um,
Well done.
it's one of my like statistically, it's one of the most well liked posts and
Yeah,
stuff, but it's also like simultaneously a lot of conflict that got triggered for people.
From
One of the
women?
main things,
From
yeah,
women?
from women,
Yeah.
like downright aggressive. I was like, wait, are these people actually following my work and they're commenting? But what I learned from that or take away is I wasn't very nuanced in terms of I didn't take a lot of time to address the fact that I was talking to a specific type of niche.
Mm.
So first of all, before I get into anything here, let me just say that obviously it depends on the context of the scenario. It depends on where someone is at their development. So perhaps we can clarify what kind of audience you think perhaps that we are speaking to at this point, so I can tailor my perspective the most to that. So would you say that, that's obviously not women in Saudi Arabia that are being suppressed by their families or
No,
beaten up
not
or
at all.
anything?
Yeah.
So what is our target audience, just so that we can be?
So it is women. A lot of the women that I even run it up against, even that I come with my clients, they're like women from like 25 to 40, and they're in
Yeah.
corporate jobs. They're in Western societies. They're working hard, and they're not
Yeah.
really realizing the sacrifices that they're making. They're basically
Mm.
burnt out from their jobs and from their families and their social lives and all of that.
Yeah, and you feel that, especially the people that you're addressing now, or the point you want to make, do you feel it's along the lines of that they are doing that out of an
Yes.
imbalanced perspective,
Yes.
like compensating for what they perceive they need to compensate for to begin with?
Yeah, and a lot of it comes down to self-worth. They feel like they've got to keep trying to climb that ladder and make more money or do this and just so that they can prove their worth. So that was another thing I was going to go into, which may tie in beautifully, is like when the underneath of having to be in the masculine is because they feel like it proves their worth.
Absolutely. Well, that was exactly the motivation from which I started that post, which is uh, it hurts me. It literally hurts me like energetically to be around people that hurt themselves, which is fine. I've learned to totally like experience that and not label that negatively. But still, obviously, I noticed that there is a lot of people in Western society, even people that are like spiritually awake, they are
Mm.
living a really conscious life. But when it comes to the feminine and the masculine dynamics, there's so many triggers left in that whole concept. And I respect that given the nature of history and all that stuff. But if we put that aside for a second and just talk about what we feel would actually be of most benefit to these people, not what would be right or like retribution or anything like that, but what would be the most healthy, the most aligned for women of around that age group that are in that scenario that you speak of? And my point exactly with this whole concept is that if we if we feel we have to rise up against the masculine, we are exactly saying yes to the thing that we're
Mm.
saying no to. So um, it's like we're accepting a paradigm of inequality. That's why we need to then prove ourselves in order to reach equality. But if we realize that we don't need to prove anything to anyone, we don't need to balance out the masculine and the feminine. I mean, that will happen over time anyway. That is happening anyway, and it has happened a lot over the past so many years. But when it comes to just a personal life and a woman living for themselves and wanting to achieve a greater alignment and greater passion with themselves, I find that many are still distracting themselves with believing that somehow they do have to compensate for a lack of worth, which
Yeah.
isn't there to begin with. And that's what's so painful. And what's misaligning is to hold the perspective at some level of our consciousness that inequality can even exist,
Mm.
or that unself-worthiness or that unworthiness or undeservability can even exist. Like the whole claim to like the whole fight to reclaim our power is based in believing that we're lacking it to begin with, or that it was stolen from us in some way, and that
Yeah.
we have to prove our ways back into it. So I really appreciate that you have that view as a woman, as your target audience
Yeah.
itself, so to speak,
Yeah.
and that you can speak to that audience better than I can as a
Yeah.
man, or at least be heard in a
Yeah.
way that makes more sense perhaps to people. But there's nothing more, in my experience, there's nothing more distracting
Mm.
when it comes to wanting to establish a truly, deeply self-worthy, feminine connection. That's not feminine as opposed to masculine, but that's simply feminine in a very powerful, natural, organic way,
Yeah.
not against anything or not opposing any masculinity, but simply out of the connection to spirit, out of the connection to life itself, to
Yeah.
being really aligned and balanced, to channel that power in a way that for most women will express itself in a very feminine way. Not for everyone, obviously. We all have different expressions of masculinity and femininity. It doesn't always have to come out as the divine feminine in a woman, but in most scenarios, it will start to look like a quality that feels really aligned, really balanced, really also really powerful, and it can be really fierce, but it's fierce for the right reasons. It's
Mm.
fierce to create clarity and balance, but not to fight against this idea that we are unworthy, to fight
Mm.
against this belief that we're not good enough as we are, and then to try to prove ourselves. There's nothing more disastrous and opposing what I personally view is the authentic feminine quality or energy.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to make it sound like the feminine quality is that of submission, not at all. I'm saying that the feminine quality is that of natural connection and a confidence or an independence, so to speak, an independent connection to life itself, like a very natural connection to life itself. And when that's really strong and channeled, then it's not distorted by these beliefs of undeservability and inequality and needing to reclaim our power. When it's allowed to simply flow through us, and we recognize that what's first and foremost is not who we are as a woman, but who we are as a being connected to
Mm.
life, then that will naturally express itself in a feminine way for
Yeah.
most female bodies.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't have to be that way, but in most cases. So when we simply connect to that sense of natural worth and that opening up to all that is as a being to the greater beingness, then that will naturally balance out whatever needs to be balanced out, and we will be able to feel really balanced, and we won't feel the need to compensate in order to take back power because we'll feel so powerful.
Mm.
That's what I mean with the independent female strength, so to speak. It's not independent against the guys. It's independent because it's actually no longer even playing that whole game of trying to win back anything.
Yeah.
It's independent, truly independent, because it's now self-sufficient. It's from the being that you are to the beingness that we all are. And you're just channeling that in a way that is uniquely you and probably has the flavor of femininity for most females. And so that's beautiful. But then it's powerful. Then it's truthful. Then it's
Mm.
authentic. Then they're not hurting themselves. Then it's actually healing and beneficial. But to try to work a job that you don't like for the sake of getting recognition or having your daddy approve of
Mm.
how reliable your choices are in life, and that you're building a pension so that once you're old and crippled you can start living the life you want, that's not true passion. That's not true femininity. That's not true masculinity either. Like
Oh,
we're all designed,
exactly.
we're all hardwired to follow our joy and to live an authentically independent, free, and satisfying life. And so it really hurts me to be around anyone, male or female, that is playing these games of unself-worthiness. Yeah,
I
in a
find
nutshell.
I find as well a lot of women don't trust being in the feminine. And then there's the opposite is then that they go the other extreme and then they don't trust the masculine. So
Mm.
I come across that almost every day. Women are like, yeah, but if I'm in the feminine, I'm in the allowing, then I can't get all this done. And I'm trying to bring them back to that point where it's like when you're both, you can get everything done and more and feel energetic and alive and joyful and all of this. But like, do you think the answer is really just surrendering to that? Like, how do women get over that?
There's stages, to be honest. So I think you're right in saying that the first stage is to surrender those ideas of conflict, those ideas of polarity and fighting. Because as long as we're fighting a game, we're limited to the rules of that game. So as long as I'm fighting against the feminine or against the masculine, I'm bound by the rules of that chess game, so to speak. You
Mm.
can't win a game by playing it by its own rules. If you truly want to let go of a game and transcend it, you've got to admit defeat. You've got to surrender to those game's rules and just let it fall apart if it needs to, so that you can actually step out of the game altogether. Sometimes it's best to just lose the game, so you can actually shift gears altogether and find what's truer. A much truer game to play would be, how do I connect more to myself, period. Not including anyone else, not including any polarities, not using the masculine and the feminine. So in a sense, surrender is an amazing word for that.
Mm.
If we can surrender that we are who we are and that there is no battle to fight, that there is nothing to prove to anyone,
Mm.
If we can really feel into that, then we can start to, in a sense, the second stage would be to let back in more naturally those feminine energies and feminine qualities.
Mm.
Because initially we've become perhaps, trying to speak to your target audience as best as I can here, at first perhaps a lot of these people, a lot of these women have overcompensated and have tried to put on sort of a masculine fight that seems to get things done,
Mm.
but it gets the wrong things done in a way.
Yeah.
It gets the things done that work against their flow and passion and against their natural connection,
Yes.
which then necessarily will limit the experience of their feminine qualities because they're suppressing it with the masculine overcompensating forces that seemingly get things done for
Yeah.
approval and acknowledgement. But if we could let go of that need to be acknowledged by the masculine or need to be acknowledged by anyone,
Mm.
period, it doesn't even have to be the masculine, just let go of needing to be acknowledged, suddenly this whole world opens up of
Yeah.
self-love and like
Yeah.
possibilities and
Yeah.
opportunities because we stop playing that game. We're
Oh,
no longer
yeah.
limited to the game of trying to prove ourselves. So that's stage one, is surrender the game, like let go of that whole game. It's tiring. It's burning you out. It's not natural. It's not giving you strength. It's not proving anything to anyone. It's not helping anyone. So surrender, I agree, first stage. Then the second stage can unfold, which would be that your energy field is naturally going to balance itself out because now it has the space to do so, right? So since we are surrendered, we are reconnecting to our self-sufficiency, our independent connection to spirit or life or source or God or however you want to call all that there is. And since we're allowing that space to be there, since we're in the allowance again, which you could call the feminine quality in a way, since we're in that allowance, again, it's not the same as submission, but it's allowance. So
Mm.
when we're in that allowance, we allow our energy then to balance itself out. And when it balances itself out, this is when stage two happens, that feminine quality starts to enter our lives more again. Now,
Yeah.
what can happen as another imbalance in this case is that we perhaps become too become wrapped up in some of the labels and ideas of, oh, I'm a divine feminine
Yes.
unicorn from outer
Yes.
space, and like, let me prove to you how beautiful
Yeah.
I am by wearing the longest like skirts that are purple colored and has a heart on them that I can while I'm burning incense all over the
Yes.
place and throwing flowers because I'm so feminine. So that could be sort of a rebellious
Mm.
imbalance that happens at stage two when those feminine qualities return, which of course is nice. It's like taking a bath after not having showered for 3 years. It's like, oh, I'm gonna like squeeze everything out of this that I can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this all the way. So that it's okay that, at some point that needs to balance itself out, and it might happen that a little overcompensation happens again in the opposite direction. That's okay too. But just the more quickly you catch this imbalance, the more quickly can you allow yourself to grow even more and become even more balanced. So then stage three happens, which is you start to orient yourself towards a more androgynous sense of identity.
Mm.
So this is where it becomes really transcendent of the polarities of masculine and feminine, while still including whatever expression feels the most authentic to you and comes the most natural to you. So if that's the feminine expression, you will still be displaying yourself and sharing yourself with this world in a way that seems mostly feminine. And
Mm.
that's perfect. That's not an imbalance in and of itself at all. But you will feel underneath that you're no longer identifying yourself as male or female because
Yes.
that still has that main contraction and polarity inside of itself. Just be it at a subtle level than at stage one when we're playing the game of the physical male and masculine and feminine war, so to speak. So when we've let go of all that, the feminine energy rebalances itself. We're more connected to ourselves. Then we can really start entering into stage three in a sense, which is a transcendent identity altogether,
Mm.
where we really become inclusive and balanced of the masculine and feminine qualities that we all share. I have a lot of feminine qualities to myself, probably as many as I have masculine, and they're all included and they're all embraced. But on the outward level, I will express myself masculine in a masculine way most often. So that's my preferred way of expressing
Mm.
myself. That's what comes most naturally to me. And it's what people seek me out the most for. And so I answer that energetic calling to show up in that way because they like the conciseness, the power to penetrate using words and wisdom and clarity. So I express myself most frequently in that way. But internally, I feel very androgynous. I feel very masculine and feminine in
Mm.
my energy. Um, and so that's ultimately what I'd say is the culmination or the higher balance point of transcending
Mm.
identification with gender altogether.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even while you're still finding great joy in expressing yourself as a male or female
Yeah.
predominant.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. So I'll just share a little example of just even the surrender and allowing, because I went through this past weekend, just for the women that are watching, what surrender actually feels like, because I didn't even think I was someone stuck in the masculine. But I went to a workshop and it kind of just it came up with allowing. I felt all this pain in my body, and for like an hour I was just like, what is this, what is it trying to say? And then the words popped into my head, I can't be strong anymore. And then I just let out a howl, like in the most inappropriate time, with like bawling my eyes out on the ground. It was just awful, and I was sick for like 2 days, and actually
Beautiful.
even all week, because that experience just allowed me to soften, because I was going through something in my family, and I was trying to be the strong one, the positive one, the spiritually enlightened one who has this perspective of things, but really I wasn't dealing with what was happening. And I just had this softening, and even I didn't want to go to the gym. I didn't want to do so many things. I just wanted to allow myself to feel that. And through that, I had so much awareness. Like this opportunity with you came up. Um, I had clients come to me. Like so much happened from being in that real surrender and vulnerable and allowing state. So for women, I just want to say it is so vital that you go there. And at first, it may not be pleasant, but it's such a beautiful experience.
Beautiful.
But I
This
want to,
is
sorry.
no, I was just saying this is gorgeous. Like this is seeing healing and balance operate and like working its magic in
Yeah,
somebody. And I just think it's beautiful that you are able to accept that without taking it as a defeat. I think that
yeah.
the problem for a lot of women is that they feel it as defeat if they surrender. They see it as equal to submission,
Mm,
or failure in some way. So I think it's beautiful that you can see and own and feel and have come to the direct experience of it that surrender actually is in your own benefit. It's winning the game.
it
It's
is
by
winning.
stepping out of the game. It's
Yeah,
winning the game. You
it,
see, it's the quickest way to come out victorious is to step out of the game.
yeah, and it's the way to really connect to the higher self and the truth of who we
Absolutely.
are. And as you said, that isn't masculine or feminine. So that's amazing. I ask I try to ask men this a lot. So I'm going to ask you, if you meet a woman like that who is very connected to the masculine and feminine, what does that feel like to you?
You broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that question? If I meet a woman,
If you What does it feel like to you as a man to be in the presence of a woman who is that perfect balance, or completely transcended the masculine feminine, but is in that flow and that fusion zone?
I mean, it feels amazing. I honestly can't say I've met a lot that really have,
Yeah,
but I can say I've met some that have come pretty far, and
yeah,
um, it feels amazing because it feels like, from a very personal level, it feels like it's so easy to be with them and to share with them. Like there's no taboos, there's no like stepping on toes, there's no like
yeah,
having to accommodate in any way in order to make her feel special or like she's the princess or
yeah.
but it happens naturally and you can still do it that way, but it's no longer required. So there's like this great balance of like down to earth fun and playfulness and not taking things seriously,
Yeah.
while simultaneously there's this great quality of like the loving gaze of the feminine is also present, and there's this space that's being held that's transformative and very powerful and very fierce and very present, but also very soft and available.
Mm.
Um, and at the same time, there's this playfulness and this wittiness and this like intellectual capacity that has naturally emerged from that balance, not
Yeah.
by trying to become that way, but from that balance. This person is now able to recognize sort of the playfulness that you would mostly see in the masculine more present
Mm.
usually. Not that female energy doesn't have playfulness, but in a different way. So when they are balanced and they're no longer able to be shaken up and you're no longer able to trigger their sense of gender identification
Mm.
and they've surrendered that completely and they've come into their own, it's the perfect blend of like preciseness and not doership, but like um, the capacity to undertake or the capacity to to make things happen, so to speak, just
Yeah.
very naturally, not out of doership really, but out of just the way that their energy now is balanced in their system. They can access that effortlessly and they can make things happen, and they're, you
Mm.
know, so they can be focused while simultaneously being very spacious and holding
Mm.
that love and that transformative energy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is amazing. It is still quite rare,
I
but
know.
that I'm just speaking from my own experience. And that's why I spoke out in that way too. And that's why I'm happy we're having this interview, is because I do feel that the majority of the women that I meet, I feel this pain inside their energy field. I feel this blockage, this contraction, and I feel it with everyone. And so, it's like I wish that either your target audience that we're speaking right now, or women in general,
Mm.
again, male too, but we're talking about the women mostly now. I wish that the feminine could, or not the feminine, but females could actually do what you just described and exemplified, which is surrender, step out of that game,
Yeah.
and find that balance of self-love being already the case. Find that worthiness to be already the case.
Yeah.
As long as you believe you're not worthy, you're going to keep playing that game. As soon as you gather the courage to see that stepping out of the game is not submission, it's not failure, it's actually victory, it's
Mm.
actually balance, it's actually the best for you, then you regain this healing and this power, and you see that you're already loved, you're already perfect as you are, you're already desired by existence itself to be exactly how you are right now. And so you can feel that perfection, and then it can really start to balance you out. It is still quite uncommon,
Mm.
but I've met it a few times and it's amazing.
Yeah. And I hear that from so many men that I ask. I've asked, like, conscious men, and they're so lit up by the idea of it, but they're like, I don't remember the last time I met a woman like that. Or they might meet, even with myself, I'll be really honest with myself. Because I'm exploring this for myself, I go in and out of it. So I know when I'm in that phase, and I know even the reaction I have from men when I'm in that phase, but I'm not living there all the time. So this is my, like, what I would love for myself, and what I really would love for every woman, and to have this conversation and to really look at it and not just look at the divine feminine.
Beautiful. Well, one of the things that comes to me a lot that I feel is crucial to achieve this balance that you speak of is one of the stumbling blocks I see a lot in women is that they feel like they're lacking power when they compare that to the masculine or the
Yeah.
world around them.
Yeah.
So, and if you go all the way back to like birth and simply the composition of the female body being more vulnerable in general, being more
Mm.
fragile in general, being less powerful or physically strong in general, you can see that very organically what starts to develop over time as we age as women is that you naturally develop a more sensitive quality to
Mm.
your physical sense of identity and how you relate to the outside world, because you feel more fragile whether you've thought this or not. This is automatic, this is subconscious programming by your environment naturally. So you feel automatically quite vulnerable as a
Mm.
woman, more so than as a male body. So
Yeah.
even from a physiological standpoint, the difference in the body types and the contrast that you see of these strong males around you and all of these brick buildings designed by architects, they could be women obviously, but just for the sake of contrast.
Yeah.
And a lot of women grow up feeling somewhat vulnerable, like preyed upon. And so by simply embodying a female body, there is a lot of physiological and circumstantial subconscious subliminal programming that happens as we grow up. And so I find that a lot of women carry this with them even into their spiritual awakening, even when they realize that they are actually consciousness, that
Mm.
they are actually eternal spirits. There still is this lingering sense of a physical body that's more fragile and that is preyed upon and that needs to be careful. And I'm not saying to not be vigilant, or I'm not saying to not be careful or mindful, um, but it is very helpful, I feel, in order to surrender to that greater balance, to actually develop a greater sense of your innate power, a greater awareness of that you are actually very powerful and that you're not as vulnerable as you think you are at all.
Yeah.
And that law of attraction brings to you the experiences that come to you. And so that from a space of consciousness and identifying with consciousness, not with gender, not with the body, but seeing that you are a consciousness having a vibrational state of being experience right now. Basically, all you are is consciousness with a state of being.
Mm.
So if you start interacting with yourself in that self-sufficient way and these energies balance themselves out, and you start to master or empower yourself at the level of consciousness, having a state of being of itself, having an attitude, having a vibrational attitude towards its existence. If you can start to up that frequency, you will start to feel more and more powerful,
Mm.
less and less identified with the vulnerability of the female body. And as a result, the balance that you spoke of the masculine and the feminine, will be more easy to then come into being. Why? Because I think that even when people have surrendered to this, that you speak of in the example you used,
Yeah.
and you use yourself as an example of sort of going back and forth and exploring this for yourself as a fairly recent thing, perhaps,
Yeah.
or as a recent balance. So one of the things that could actually facilitate you stepping into that even more would be to investigate or to have a very clear awareness applied to that level of yourself where you might feel automatically vulnerable as a woman.
Mm.
And if you go to that sort of sense of physiological vulnerability and you bring enough clarity and awareness and connection to all that isness and connection to power and connection to spirit with you in your seeing,
Mm.
when you're sensing that automatically programmed sense of physical vulnerability, you will find that it starts to sort of open up like a flower. Instead of being protective of itself, the flower starts to blossom and it
Yeah.
starts to fully surrender to its vulnerability, but then also transcend it at the same time, precisely because it's no longer enclosing itself. So this is another way or a deeper layer of letting go of that game of opposites
Mm.
and really starting to feel and know that you are a powerful being, that you are a consciousness having a vibrational experience, and that you can choose
Mm.
another state of being if you want to, and that will come with a different law of attraction reality brought to you. So you are in control, you are empowered simply by shifting your sense of identity from the body to that truer heart space consciousness level of your being.
Yeah.
And whenever you do that, you start to actually feel more powerful. And when you feel more powerful, you are more powerful.
Mm.
And you will attract that in your life and you will see examples of that. And this is a powerful way to heal that automatic programming that happened at an early age of
Yeah.
feeling vulnerable as a physical being, as a physical female.
Yeah.
And this will help you greatly in balancing that out and finding even greater transcendence of gender altogether and more embodiment of both.
Yeah. Do you know what's interesting? I just had a flashback then of when I went through my little breakdown moment in the workshop that I attended. I was like, I had all this pain in my body, but when I kind of let out the howl, I was like holding my lower stomach, like my womb. And even the facilitator came over because everyone got me a chair to sit down. And he's like pointing to my stomach, going, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I don't know why I'm holding that," but I was literally like covering my womb, I guess. So that could be
Oh, wow.
connected to that. But I never really
Yeah.
thought of it like that. I just thought that was me contracting.
Mm.
Does that make
No, I think
sense?
it's probably the instinct to protect, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So that runs very deep. So even when people intellectually get the idea that we're talking about of balance, there is this instinctual part to bring some love and awareness to as well, and healing, which has been programmed since an early age onward by your surroundings and by the very fact, the mere fact that you are inhabiting a physical being that is slightly more vulnerable, seemingly, than most other bodies out there that are
Yeah.
of a male nature. So even something as simple as that can be overlooked, but it has a
Mm.
profound effect as to how we identify and protect ourselves.
Mm.
And that's like automatic. So it takes quite a subtle, penetrative awareness and a sense of self-love to be able to go to those levels and stop playing those games and start to transform the feeling of I'm not powerful and I am vulnerable and I have to be careful all the time and I have to prove myself in order to achieve worthiness, and open it up into I'm already perfect. I am an eternal being. I am an eternal consciousness. I'm not the vulnerability of the body. I can be powerful. I can be adventurous. I can be wild. I can be free. I don't have to protect myself. I don't have to feel like I have to protect myself because I
Mm.
am protected by spirit. I am protected by my state of consciousness. I'm protected by the vibration that I choose to be in. And so by choosing the vibration consciously and to be in alignment with those higher powers, I will effortlessly be protected by forces that
Yeah.
are far, far more powerful than the physical body ever could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's good to bring some healing to those instinctual
Mm.
self-protective mechanisms as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think this woman that we're speaking of, the elusive
Sorry?
woman, this woman that we're speaking of, of the woman that is this beautiful fusion of the masculine and feminine, is really a gateway into the new paradigm of relationships as well, which is what I want to touch on if you have time. If you don't have time, we can do that at another stage.
No, I have
Um,
time.
but I know you've been talking a little bit about relationships, and you did a live call on Valentine's Day, I think. I haven't actually seen any of that stuff yet, but I've seen a few of your posts, and it really speaks to my heart, and something that I've been looking into. I have a coach who's really taught me a lot about this, but I don't know if I'm on the same wavelength as you are with this, so I'm just going to open up the conversation. But what I would love to experience in relationships is just surrendering to the fear, especially around um, jealousy and um, monogamy and see, I'm even getting awkward talking about the conversation. But I
Sure.
think in relationships, there's so much fear. Like most relationships are based on fear and
Yeah.
possessiveness and this thing that we have to be with the one person for the rest of their life. But, my dear friend who's also my coach, she's really showed me that if, for instance, if you're in a partnership and that partner wants to be with another person, then that is complete oneness, and that them being with another person actually gives something to you because it's love, and there's no secrets, there's no hiding, there's no manipulation, there's no cheating. It's just this beautiful oneness that gives to you. And I think a man has to be very in his um he has to be very aligned with source, to me, to be able to hold that space. But I think a woman needs to be very aligned as well to be able to go into that with love and without fear. So
Wow. Yes. Beautiful. I'm just writing a pretty in-depth article that makes a few statements and that puts a standard up, so to speak, of how I see, like, from an ultimate point of view, of course, understanding that this is a work in progress for everyone, including myself to some extent.
yeah,
Um, but to see, like, to really strip away all these assumptions that we have of what it means to be in a relationship. We have
mm,
so many assumptions
yeah,
of how it has to look like and why
yeah,
and what cheating is and what this is and what that is. We have so many ideas about it that we don't even know anymore what relationship actually is, what the purpose of it is. We forgot. We're thinking in terms of, like, as the world turns, bold and the beautiful, all these influences that we've seen on media and that our parents
yeah,
believed in. That's what we think of as a relationship, but that's not what relationship is from an objective spirit point of view.
yeah,
If you look at life as it is, so we have to have the courage to sort of start by, even if it frightens us, if we
yeah,
want more enlightened relationship, we have to be willing to at least admit fact versus fiction.
mm,
And 90% of how we engage in relationships at this point comes from fiction. It comes from story. It comes from labels. It comes from fear. It comes from trying to satisfy this sense of fear and vulnerability again. So this power topic comes into that as well, like to really find our own independent strength
mm,
and to find that our number one relationship, our only relationship, truly, is that of ourselves to our higher selves, of ourselves to our inner purpose, of ourselves to our path in life. That's what we want to fall in love with. We want to make our own lives so exciting
mm,
that a relationship is absolutely secondary and that we'll effortlessly attract the partners that meet us where we're at that level without us actually stepping off of our train, at least not too much,
mm,
to accommodate any relationship, but to, like, stay on the train of being in love with our own path and journey to such an extent that generates such a powerful energetic vortex and slipstream that we'll find the people that match us at certain stages, at certain stations of the train track, but we're not actually stopping where we're going for the sake of a relationship. That's how much we want to be in love with ourselves. Even if the perfect partner arrives, we still want to stay true to who we are and what
mm,
our journey is telling us to go into next.
yeah,
Now, if we can fall in love with ourselves to that extent and feel so fulfilled and self-satisfied, then it doesn't really matter. We become so much less attached, if at all, to the people that we're meeting,
mm,
and it increases the ability to actually see clearly from a space of unconditional love instead of being tainted by all of our ideas and beliefs and what can I get out of this and how can I maintain this, which all comes from lacking the ability to see that we are super powerful and free agents of the infinite that are here for exciting purposes, and that infinite possibilities await our choice to shift our frequency. That's it. A single inspiring thought can shift our whole lives around and can show us all these opportunities and possibilities that we didn't see before because we weren't in the appropriate frequency.
Mm.
And if we're not in the appropriate frequency of being really powerfully aligned with our spirit, with our higher selves, then we will naturally seek replacements for that in the interactions that we have. And we will start to think that our joy comes predominantly from our relationship with other human beings, which is not actually true if you take this deep enough.
Yeah.
Yes, it's one of the most beautiful and important aspects and reflections of being alive and following our joy. It is one of the most crucial and predominant aspects of following our joy, but it's not the focal point itself. It's what happens on the side. It's what happens alongside you being on your journey.
Mm.
But what we need to prioritize and what we've forgotten, I think, as a civilization, is that we are here first and foremost to create a reality that is a complete match to our true inspirations and love-based desires. And when we can find our excitement again by following the breadcrumb trail of focusing on what feels the most exciting in this moment to be taking action on or to be thinking about or imagining or interacting with, and we start acting on that every single second of every single day to the best of our ability, one step at a time, not thinking too far ahead of ourselves, just being able to recognize very clearly using our radar, using our guidance system, what option right now contains the most benefit intuitively? What would challenge me the most, but in such a way that it's beautiful and exciting? What is the most fulfilling opportunity I have available right now? And just start acting on all of that without projecting where it should lead or how it should come about or when it should come about or what it should look like, but just acting, starting to learn to follow that resonance, follow that sense of excitement, because whatever contains the most amount of excitement actually contains the most amount of your joy and your higher self being able to come to you in a way that you understand and can integrate. So we got to trust that one breadcrumb at a time path of following our joy. And when we do that, we become so powerful, we become so self-satisfied that we'll naturally step out of these mind games of attachment and jealousy that will naturally start to dissipate. Now, maybe some context, because maybe it sounds like I'm just talking from thin air, but this literally used to be my biggest fear, like against reason. Like this used to like grab me by the throat whenever I thought of um, a partner leaving me or cheating on me or dying while we're in a relationship.
Yeah.
I've always been the type to fully 100% commit to a person, especially when I was younger. I still do that, but it's in a different way. Now it's from a place of transparency and the predominant commitment being to my own journey. Still being 100% available to that relationship with the most integrity I know how to. But back in the day, it was with attachment. It was from a place of attachment. It was from a place of, it's you and me against the world, baby, and
Yeah.
and that used, for some reason, that was so strong for me. Like, even at the age of 14, 15, 16, even younger, like, I used to scare away every girlfriend I
Oh
was
my
with, like, within 2 weeks, because I was, like, taking their whole life,
yeah,
It's like, no, we got to do this. So that always was a big thing for me. And the biggest fear I had was to finally find someone that I feel really connected to, and then for them to die
yeah,
or cheat on me or leave.
yeah,
And of course, that's exactly what happened. Uh,
yeah. Interesting.
it's after this like 3-year relationship, living together, working together, um, that is what happened. And so, not the death part, but
Yeah.
we broke up anyway. So, so I attracted that to myself out of my fear. And but I can say I'm sharing this because even after that point, like I got married at some point, and I had the same like strong attachment still to that idea of you and me against the world, and it was my biggest fear to let go of that and to like imagine her with another guy was I would die just
Yeah.
thinking of it. So, and right now I can say that that's not the case at all anymore, and
Yeah.
it's so liberating to be able to say that.
Yeah.
Um, so I just want to share that so that people know that this is absolutely doable, and
Yeah.
that the way to do this is not to necessarily incessantly work on your jealousy beliefs, although that's an aspect of the training. But the most important aspect is to actually ascend to higher levels of connection with yourself and start creating a life that is more and more joyful for yourself, and discover through proof, through living evidence, that if every time you step up your vibration and inspiration and you allow that to come through you, that you will reflect to you a reality that's even better than before, and even better than before, and even better than before. When you do this, your sense of dependency on other people starts to disappear naturally.
Yeah.
So this takes care of 98% of the psychological work that you will need to attend to when it comes to jealousy.
Yeah.
Because you will feel so, if you feel truly powerful and connected, and like the whole world, or even more than this world, like infinite parallel realities, are at your disposal. When you start to feel and realize that and know that, you're going to laugh at yourself for believing that losing a relationship is a big deal.
Yeah.
It just starts to seem kind of silly. Doesn't mean you don't care about people. Doesn't mean you don't love them. You do. But you are always connected to your sense of infinite possibility and power, and you know that something even more aligned with where you're at that stage will effortlessly come to you because you've seen this work at a smaller scale, and then at a medium scale, and then at a larger scale. And at some point, you lose all skepticism that this is how life works for you.
Yeah.
And so the fear we have is not that we lose that person or that they enjoy having sex with someone else. That's not our fear. Our fear is that we lose something, period. That we lose happiness, that we lose access to possibilities, that we lose access to what we desire. So when you start to bump up your frequency and live in a more ascended, inspired way, and you start acting on that in that way, and you start seeing the results, and it starts liberating your mind from limiting lack beliefs, you will start to know that you could never lose or lack anything you truly desire. And when you know that, you start relating with people, not from what can I get from you? How can I deprive you of your free will in order to please my own sense of lack? No, now it's like, how can I give to you an epic, adventurous journey that will set you free even more, that will open your throat chakra, that will make you a full expression to this world, authentically connected to who you are, powerfully connected to who you are. And when it's time to go separate ways, it will be beautiful. We'll shed a few tears, we'll watch a romantic movie together, and we'll say goodbye. But it's out of giving, it's out of love and affection. It's not out of getting and trying to please our sense of unworthiness. So yes, it takes some courage to own up to the fact that these beliefs are not real. The relationship ideas we have are not facts, they're fiction. We need to own up to that first and foremost. It's a little scary because it makes us no longer be able to be righteous when we say, well, hey, you want to be with someone else. That is bad on your part. It's not bad on their part. It's natural desire coming up. And sure, sometimes it can come from distorted childhood energies of not being able to express oneself, and then maybe at some point the guy wants to just fuck everything inside. Excuse my language. So I'm not saying that every desire always comes from a balanced place in everyone, and that can of course be addressed in relationships. But when it comes to the essence of it, we need to accept people's free will. Ultimately, a relationship of love is not love based if it does not set the other person free. So we need to gain that courage to not feel righteous when we say, like, yeah, but you were looking at this person. That's not true. That's fiction. You're not in your right mind to say that. You're not validated by anything other than a civilization full of people that also live in fiction and fear. That's your only validation. That's the only ground to base a judgment off of when you say, I don't like it that you like that person. How could you do that to me? That's not based on facts. That's not based on nature. That's not based on spirit. That's not based on empowerment. That's not based on love. That's based only on 7 billion less evolved people giving you an image of what relationship is all about. Has nothing to do with commitment and stuff like that. So we need to really start looking at the facts. What are the facts? Each being is an individual free agent of the infinite. They're connected to their own higher self, and the main focus, the only focus that brought them into this physical life, is their own purpose in this life for learning and expressing more of the one infinite creator in the way that's unique to their soul. We need to honor this. If we cannot honor this in ourselves and feel empowered by that, and honor it in others and let them feel empowered in our presence, we're not talking about a relationship. We're talking about abuse. Mutually agreed upon abuse. So we need to own up to that first and foremost. I almost finished the article, so by the time this is posted, it'll probably be up there for reference
because I
on
think
my blog.
it all starts in relationships. I mean, relationships are just such a huge part of life here on Earth. And it's like if we can
Yes.
kind of get this, even tiny little aspects of this within our relationships, and that's just going to flow into so many other parts of our life, and it is heaven on earth.
Yes. Yes.
I have a very childlike way of thinking about even this topic of I remember when I was a kid, I used to think, oh, if I got married to this person and they died, and then I married someone else, in heaven, who would I be with? It's like a very childlike thing, but I
Nice.
think, what if we
You'd be
could
with
have,
both of them.
yeah, it's like, it's kind of like, well, in heaven, you're just spirits, it's all one. And I think, wouldn't that be amazing to bring that here of just pure love, where it's not like him and this guy and this guy, it's just like, it's one love.
Absolutely, then.
And I don't mean
Yes.
that by being with different partners. I just mean with just being
Yeah, it can look
this one
like
love.
whatever
Yeah.
it genuinely looks like for that partnership agreement.
Yeah.
But you will find that the more authentic it becomes, the less and less tight the agreements become.
Yeah.
And this is a work in progress. This is over time.
Yeah.
But basically, setting set agreements and setting them on paper, so to speak, or even verbalizing them
Mm.
as like, this is what we agree upon. It is
Yeah.
great. Honestly, it's the way to go with any relationship to grow. But ultimately, we have to admit, or we have to see that it's based in a lack of trust. It's based in
Mm.
perceiving a lack of possibilities for
Yeah.
our own lives
Yeah.
and making our happiness dependent on the other person, at least a little bit to some degree.
Mm.
And it's dependent on ownership, possessiveness of some
Mm.
kind. And it's how can that be the ultimate version of love and unconditionality? It's not. So it's okay to have these agreements, but it's even better to also simultaneously recognize while you're accepting where you're at in this, you don't have to go faster than you can handle, but at least acknowledge that you have some ways to go still. That's
Mm.
okay.
Mm.
But that ultimately what you're moving into, even though it still scares the
Mm.
bejesus out of you at
Yeah.
this point, perhaps, I'm
Yeah.
talking in general, not just to you,
Yeah.
is to at least admit that you know in your heart that when you are a completely 100% powerful being that's absolutely trusting of their connection to God and that everything happens in perfect orchestration and that lack can never truly occur. It's only an illusion. It never really happens. You always attract what you do desire ultimately. And so when you can start to feel into that power, you will have to admit that it makes no sense to claim someone for your own
Mm.
and live this tiny little life together where you watch Desperate Housewives every night over Domino's Pizza, and like squabble over not liking the job that you're at and
Mm.
trash talking your colleagues and stuff. That's not the life you want to live. That's not safety. That's not security. That's not trust. That's not love. That's not
Mm.
passion. That's not excitement. That's nothing that is inspired by spirit. And so
Mm.
that's not where you ultimately want to be, or even a slight representation of that is not where you want to be. Where you want to be is to feel so powerful as an individual, so independent in your power that you can now truly, truly shine love onto the being
Mm.
that you're with without attachment. Now,
Mm.
this is an ultimate vision. I realize this will
Mm.
take some time for many, many people. It took a lot of time for me,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But at least know that it's out there so that you can start gearing up towards that because it's happening faster and faster on a collective level. This paradigm is breaking up. And once the 100 monkey effect starts to actually go into effect, you will be forced into, not forced ultimately, but in a sense, you'll be forced
Yeah.
into a collective paradigm where suddenly this whole idea is broken wide open. Um, and so marriage, for example, might not even exist anymore 20 years from now. Officially, it
Yeah.
might just be a permission slip for some people, a casual thing. It will
Mm.
no longer be institutionalized in the way that it is or
Forever.
organized in the way
Yeah.
that it is, just as an example. And so we'll start living in a world where we each appreciate each other's alignment to each other's higher self
Mm.
before anything else.
Yes.
And that would give us so much joy and a sense of love and connection that we won't need to deprive anyone else anymore of their connection to their own true joy and path and desire.
Yeah. Sounds amazing.
Honestly, it is. And the
Yeah.
tricky part too is like speaking of my personal experiences more, is like usually being the one that is a little bit more this way. My partners, for example, it's a, it's also a challenge, and I'm sure because I think a lot of people will start to have to deal with this to some extent as they step up their own game, as they free up their own paradigm. You will
Mm.
probably meet women or men that are still coming more from a place of, oh, I could be lacking this connection with you, or I could be lacking what you give to me. So it's a fun challenge and it improves one's own ability to be free and less attached and more loving, unconditional in nature, is to be in the role of to sort of navigate that in a balanced, nuanced way that really cares for where the person is at, but simultaneously does not make any concessions on communicating what is the true desire of your being connected to your own higher self,
Mm.
and what's your true path in that moment, and what's your priority. So you can make that priority of your connection to yourself obvious to the other person, and you can communicate this with kindness and care,
Mm.
obviously, and you can even agree to some level of agreements if that makes sense in that moment for a period of time, or for however long that resonates. You can agree to their paradigm to some extent, sort of meet them halfway and allow them to meet you halfway, and so you're helping that person expand beyond their paradigm of limitation and lack and step more into a challenging, but when they discover it, more powerful state of being, a more
Mm.
empowering state of being. And so together you will grow in this way, and in the process you will etch out even more of your own attachments and insecurities as you go along.
Mm.
So
It's definitely achievable, and I really want to inspire people to even just be open to the conversation. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it or want that for yourself, but
yeah.
it all starts with just being open to the conversation and hearing the truth in it.
Yeah, and also to be clear, this doesn't mean like I don't feel that what we're talking about or advocating here is having multiple
No,
relationships at the
not at
same
all.
time, per se.
Yeah,
I mean, for some individuals, it could turn out to look that way, and that's
yeah,
totally fine too. I mean, that's perfect as well. But for many people, especially considering the paradigm that we do come from and what we are used to,
yeah,
I think for most people, and that includes myself, this is how it expresses itself for me most of the time, is being with one person for a period of time.
yeah,
However, how it expresses itself for me is that I'm fully available to that person, but as soon as I feel the dynamics are shifting and whatever the purpose behind the relationship has been fulfilled,
mm,
I will start to communicate that there is a change of heart. And so, what I'm not afraid of is changing relationships.
yeah,
But for me, it doesn't really resonate to be with multiple people at the same time. I've done some shallow explorations of that and what that would be like. It's just not really, I don't know, it doesn't resonate for me as
yeah,
much. It's not the most conducive. Um, I'm open to it happening in some way where it does feel right in that moment for a short period of time or whatever. But I still prefer, so I'm probably speaking to the majority of people, I still prefer like being able to give myself fully to one person at
mm,
any given time.
yeah,
So I'm not saying it would just be like everyone is just messing around with everyone.
yeah,
That's not what I'm saying. Again, that too is perfect. That too is
mm,
acceptable. But what I'm saying is most of the time where how it will express itself for our society is that we're still giving ourselves fully to one person that we resonate the most with in that moment, but we're not killing it by putting it in this tiny little pot of agreements that's keeping it tight and dense and that's taking all the freedom out of it.
yeah,
So we're learning to give 100% without the need for agreements.
yeah,
This is the ultimate way to give of oneself, is to give 100% without first having to hear, well, I promise I won't want anyone else.
mm,
No, I don't want you to promise me anything you can promise.
yeah,
You're a natural being. You're an organic, free agent of the universe. And however your higher self will inspire you to move about your journey next, I want you to honor that. That's
yeah,
the agreement that I want to
yeah,
have.
yeah,
And that does not mean that I will shy away from this relationship. And because you don't fully commit to me in this tight agreement, I won't give everything I have to you. No, I want to give everything I have to you.
mm,
I want to give the best of me to you, regardless of what you think you can promise me. I don't want you to promise me anything other than that you'll honor your alignment with your spirit and you'll communicate that, because I know that if it's time for you to move on, it's time for me to move on too.
mm,
And that something new comes along. And I'm
yeah,
not afraid of the next relationship. Um, and I'm not afraid of losing my present relationship. So when we can really get to that place of freedom
yeah,
within ourselves,
yeah,
we can start to know what it's like to give unconditionally, to love unconditionally and fearlessly, while still having great resonance and excitement for that
mm,
relationship at the time that our higher selves are making that the sole focus of our life for a moment,
yeah,
because that's what's magnetic in that moment. That's what we learn from. But we know underneath that that can change and most likely will change, and we will honor it when it does change, not turning it into a negative picture just because it has changed.
mm,
We start to move with the waves, the ups and downs and the waves and the coming and the goings of the organic state of life itself. The only constant is change. And so when we embrace the freedom and empowerment of going with that, we can give 100% to anyone unconditionally, while simultaneously not getting stuck in any fiction.
Mm. Yeah.
Might not be overnight for most people. But
No.
if this rings true to some
Yeah.
extent to the people that are listening in, then it's at least worth just considering it and like trying to find some excitement in that. The more excitement you find in that, the more you will start gradually working your way towards that. And very effortlessly, before you know it, you look back upon your life and you're like, 1 year ago, I would never imagine doing what I'm doing
Yeah.
right now, or feeling so free as I'm feeling right now, or feeling so able to love someone without needing any promise in return. Like even 2 months ago, like I could never imagine having done it then, but
Yeah.
I'm doing it now, and it's feeling so empowering, and it's feeling so beautiful and pure and true.
Yeah. And I think it's so freeing. And I think that for me, why I'm open to the conversation is because I want to be that being that is free and in love and not just have this contracting fear all the time. So that's my desire to pursue this because I want to experience that.
Honestly, I think that's beautiful, and I think that is how it has to come for everyone. It has to be
Yeah.
an intrinsic desire for
Mm.
your own orientation in life.
Mm.
If this is not something that you want and you don't feel that it's pure or more in alignment
Mm.
for you to break out of those habits and
Mm.
conventions and really start embracing life more purely as it is, and as
Mm.
you can see it more clearly from an enlightened awareness, if that's not someone's true desire, then none of this will make sense or be productive. It will
Mm.
just be counterproductive.
Yeah.
But if people find it in themselves that they have an intrinsic desire for their own greater awakening and greater empowerment and less limitations to
Mm.
cloak their light, to cloak their spirit and their freedom, then that's the only thing that is required to start the ball rolling. And naturally, you will attract to yourself the invitations and challenges you need to see the beliefs that are limiting you. And then you get choice whether you still want to hold on to them or whether you believe you are powerful and free and
Mm.
provided for enough
Yeah.
to let go of those limiting lack beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's when you start to feel so blissful in
Yeah.
yourself, in relationships, in life, in all the
And
opportunity you have.
yeah, in everything. It is abundance.
Yes, and then you can give. You can't give if you're in lack. You can only give if you're abundant. So
Yeah.
you got to be a little bit selfish and
Yes.
want to achieve a greater state of freedom within yourself so that you can actually improve your service to others
Yeah, definitely.
quite naturally.
Thank you for sharing
Thank you for
your
sharing.
view on this. It's been
I
amazing.
appreciate your process.
Yeah, thank you. Um, I have many questions, but I think we this is perfect timing to close this and just give thanks for your presence and your time. I really appreciate it. I know I got something out of it, so I hope people watching have really been open to new thoughts, ways of thinking. So thank you very much. And
Beautiful.
hopefully talk to you again.
Yes, that'd be great. Thanks, Liv.
Thanks. Thanks.
Much love to you.
Yeah, you too.